watching a couple of your recent videos. You posted one called Something Rather Than Nothing. You talked a lot about causality. And, I mean, just to briefly summarize what you said, and then you can sort of fill in the gaps. It seems like you were saying you don't think that there has to be a purpose to the larger cosmological evolutionary process, that it can just be sort of cause and effect that doesn't know where it's going, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's what I don't see any problem with that, essentially. I see some individuals finding it as mildly problematic because of their incessant need or their just distinct want for it to be something more large scale. But granted, what we have available to us, I see no reason to reach out further than that. Not that I don't think it's a possibility, just that I don't think there's anything that would allow me to infer such a thing.
Okay. Well, let me raise a couple examples of where I see purposeful processes in nature, and you can tell me how you might explain them. The first, and I think the most basic in general, comes from the second law of thermodynamics, this idea that entropy always increases. So that's not to say that order can't be generated, it's just to say that in the large scheme of things, because no energy can be created or destroyed, which is the first law, all energy will basically tend towards disorder. But we happen to live in an expanding universe, so local pockets of order are allowed to emerge because of the entropy on a larger scale, right? So this seems to be a directed teleological process in a way, though it doesn't know where it's going. But would you agree that there's some sort of a purposive?
No, I mean I recognize the expansion, and I certainly recognize the pockets of order, or at least what we'd call order.
Right.
It's all obviously via perspective, and that's going to be problematic as well.
Perspective itself, though, isn't that an example of the order which has emerged?
Not necessarily. I don't know if I call perspective order. It's certainly something that allows us to take things into account, though I wouldn't call that order either. Order does seem to be, again, some particular arrangement. And I don't know that I see arrangement necessarily as much as I see pockets of particular things coming up in certain places, interacting with other things.
Right.
Arrangement really, I mean, the problem with the words arrangement and order is that they infer, before even assessing what it is that's arranged, they infer, or they presuppose, rather, something doing that ordering and arranging. So we see something that we would possibly perceive as order or ordered, via what we would normally make ourselves. And as a result, we then move to infer a designer for that itself, or some kind of conscious motivation in the universe itself. And I think that it's either in unsupported inference or one that might be slightly presumptuous.
When you talk about conscious motivation, there seems to imply that there is something distinctly different from that, as in awareness, some void that is aware of this object, this conceptual thought, categorically different and distinct, and that doesn't seem to need purpose. It doesn't need anything to be aware. Is that what you're getting at here? And this, that's very, in a sense, can be considered spiritual. More in the Eastern type of spirituality is this identification with this awareness. So this is, this position is, I think, atheists like Sam Harris take, and maybe some others. Is this the kind of opening to spirituality that you might be open to? And it's more a philosophy. It's more of a going back with logic until you kind of reach this absolute subjectivity. I was wondering if you could speak about that.
See, it seems to be an issue of taboo for atheists with the word spirituality. I mean, there's good reason why I've been grouped so many times, especially by Enmendum, into the phantasmagorical group, because I see no reason. Again, I believe in free will. I believe that consciousness is not the same as the brain, though it is dependent upon the brain to some extent, and as a result, I recognize the dualistic separation, but at the same time, I recognize the necessity for connection. So this is why I'm grouped into it so many times, though I don't call myself spiritual, though I do see the interconnectedness in nature.
Okay, so to get back to what you were saying earlier about arrangement, the arrangement that we perceive as order may not actually be order, is what you were saying, right? So that we shouldn't really we can't draw any scientific laws out of the fact that our universe appears to have increased in order over time, because you think any recognition of order upon our part is just a projection of a designer where there really hadn't been a designer?
To an extent, yeah. And even the thing is, even if it is ordered and we're perceiving order properly, we're seeing an ordered system,
Yeah.
I still think it's presumptuous to move to orderer or conscious organizer, either being the universe itself or something manipulating the universe. I think that's still slightly presumptuous without being able to somehow reference what that thing is. I mean,
Right.
This is where the ambiguity comes in. So, well, what is the organizer? Is it the thing itself? Is it some process that it's contained to? So that's as far as I would see it.
Okay.
I would see the laws as these processes that the universe is kind of contained to via just static characteristics that it happens to have. I don't think these are in any way meaningful in themselves. I think they just happen to trend towards some particular end.
I got you. So I think, I don't know, maybe a couple months ago, we exchanged a couple videos about the design paradigm in biology. And I think the design paradigm can be extended to cosmology too. And like you're saying, it doesn't work. This is what intelligent design tries to do, to pretend to be a scientific theory. It says that a designer is a scientific hypothesis, and you can see the evidence of the designer in the artifact or in the organism. And that's not in alignment with scientific reasoning, because it's not falsifiable.
Right.
You can always find design, right?
Exactly. What I'm saying is you can see design, though design doesn't necessarily somehow connote designer.
Right.
Design just connotes design, unless we can somehow allude to the designer via some other objective method.
Right. So instead of trying to find that sort of design in nature, whether it's on a larger scale of universes or galaxies, or on a smaller scale of organisms, I think that's a mistake. And when I talk about purpose in cosmology, I don't mean to imply design. I just mean to imply that there's some inner or immanent purpose which appears to make complexity and order increase over time. Right?
I mean, yeah, I hear what you're saying. And if you mean via the characteristics that I've accepted to be kind of static rather, in regards to the things in the universe, then I understand where you're going with this purposive idea. That it's, again, this trend towards something may seem purposive in that options for veering are not as wide-ranging as we might believe.
Okay.
I wanted to read an anonymous quote about the universe, Jasper. I want to get your take on it. It says, "We are an impossibility in an impossible universe," basically implying that it was just this. The odds were against us, but yet somehow chemistry evolved sentience, like Inmenden would say.
Yeah. Is this like a physicist, or do you...
No, I said it was anonymous. But I think it was relevant because it demonstrates. It kind of underhandingly demonstrates a worldview. And I wanted to say, because I wanted to note that at the end of the day, I intuit that you're more of a pragmatist, and these worldviews may be different, but at the end of the day, what does it really mean? And does harboring a certain worldview actually affect life pragmatically, or someone else's practically? I wanted to hear about your thoughts on that.
Well, my question is, where are they drawing the statistical inference from? I mean, again, calling something impossible or improbable presumes that there's some method that they've used to establish this with inquiry.
Yeah.
And so where, right? Like, so as far as we understand it, the odds are 1 in 1. I mean, it's happened one time. It only had the opportunity to happen one time. And where are they drawing such an inference from? Where are they getting their stats from?
Some people don't really like when you unearth these kind of things about our assumptions. Mm-hmm. And then when we do that, I guess it's an unease of being on like quicksand, right? They're on shaky ground. They don't know. Well, and as a philosopher, you just want to make everything shaky ground and question. I guess if you're pulling from the Socratic method, or more of the just questioning, what do we really know?
Yeah.
That's your ultimate kind of goal, the pursuit of knowledge and truth. If you, as best we can, come to know it.
Maybe we can segue from this into a discussion about the difference between subjectivity and the knowledge available to it, and objectivity and the sort of knowledge we can have that might be objective. Because it seems like, Avi, when you say the human being tends to perceive purposes where really there may not be, like when it's observing nature, that seems to be you putting a limit or some kind of limitation upon what rationality or what the intellect is capable of knowing. What is subjective and what is objective.